welcome to SI Now. We will get into the disaster in D.C. and Michael Jordan calling his own team trash, but we have to start with the NFL. The Eagles held on to beat the Panthers on the road. Eagles are now 5-1. Robin Lundberg, are they the best team in the NFC?
East. They're the best team in the NFC East right now.
That's not what I asked.
I won't go so far to proclaim them the best team in the NFC when you still have the Falcons, you still have the Packers. I'm not ruling out the Seahawks. The teams with a bit of a track record, right? But I've been very impressed with the Eagles defensively. Obviously, Carson Wentz has had a very good season thus far. So they're in the mix. They're in the conversation where I would say if the Eagles wound up in the Super Bowl, I wouldn't be shocked. But I'm not ready to say I'm picking the Eagles to come out of the NFC.
I'm not ready to pick them yet, but I do like this team because they have all the hallmarks of what great teams do. Their defense forced Cam Newton into 3 picks, and then Wentz went off and scored 2 touchdowns off of those turnovers. Making opponents pay for their mistakes, especially on the road, I think is a really great sign if you want to make a claim to being the best team in the conference. Eagles are the best team on third down in the league. Wentz has the highest third down conversion rate in just his second year. And then the small things, right? Like their kicker is dynamite from long distance. I mean, when you have every single phase, I'm going to sound like a football coach right now. You have all 3 phases are working in concert. But I really feel like that's what I'm seeing with this Eagles team. And I know that Doug Peterson has taken a lot of criticism for some of his play calling, other things. But I feel like this is actually a very well-balanced team. You saw they're overcoming the loss of Darren Sproles. That's another hallmark of a good team. So I won't say it yet because we're just so early in the season. But I have my eye on the Eagles, and I feel like they are legit contenders right now.
Despite all that talk about balance, of course, the attention goes on one guy, and that is Carson Wentz, who's excelled thus far this year, making him our adrenaline performer presented by Toyota. Let's go places. Wentz threw 3 touchdowns against the Panthers and has 7 TD passes in the last 2 weeks. He also has 7 TD passes on third down this season. That's 3 more than any other quarterback in the league. Maggie, has Wentz put himself into the MVP conversation?
He definitely has, but let's not go too far down this road because remember a season ago, Wentz also looked incredible in the beginning part of the season, and then the entire team and him sort of faltered down the stretch. So I'm not ready to put him in MVP yet. I think he's a dark horse. I think there's a lot of ground to make up between him and Alex Smith at this point if we're talking about MVPs. But I wouldn't rule it out. You know, for me, the NFL MVP, it's a narrative award, and I feel like Alex Smith has the better story going right now than Carson Wentz, but that could all change.
The Eagles did best a former MVP last night, and to get some perspective on the Panthers side of things and the other big stories in the NFL, let's bring in Jonathan Jones from Charlotte, courtesy of Toyota. Let's go places. Jonathan, Cam Newton threw a terrible interception near the end of the game, but in many ways was the only reason they were in the game. He has every single passing and rushing TD for the team this season. Is Carolina relying on him to this degree sustainable?
I don't think so. They're going to have to get their running game going. We've seen Jonathan Stewart, basically once he got the team's all-time rushing record, wresting that away from DeAngelo Williams 2 weeks ago, he's almost gone backwards. I think he had less than 20 rushing yards last week or last Sunday. And then, of course, he finished with negative rushing yards again last night. You look at Christian McCaffrey. He's really been getting it done in the receiving game, but he hasn't been able to get anything going on the ground. And so really the Panthers' only spark in the rushing game has been Cam Newton. And as we all know, of course, Cam slimmed down this season so that he would be able to, be a little faster, be a little lighter. But he also had put on the pounds previously so that he could absorb those hits. And now he's a 28-year-old quarterback in his 7th season in the league. He can't be taking all of the hits that he has in the past. And so when you look at this Panthers offense, very effective in the air. They have a lot of dynamism. They're able to motion Christian McCaffrey. They've really been using him as a decoy. But those things will not matter if you do not have a sound rushing game.
Yeah, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball, though, for the Panthers, because unfortunately this is something we've seen every season for the past 3, and that is Luke Kuechly in the concussion protocol. Jonathan, are the Panthers concerned that Kuechly's career may be in jeopardy at just 26 years of age?
Well, they certainly have to be concerned for his long-term health, right? I mean, 3 and 3 seasons. Honestly, if you're being even more specific, it's been 3 and 26 months because his first one occurred in September of 2015. And then, of course, in week 11 last season in the nationally televised game against the Saints. And then, of course, last night. So that was his 3rd one on what seemed to be a very routine hit It's a kind of hit where the guard is pulling and he hits Kuechly, and it's the kind of hit that you see on almost every play in the NFL every weekend. And so, research has shown that once you start to get to that third concussion, that recovery time is going to be slower, that you will likely be more susceptible to concussions later on. And so I don't know if in Pantherland there's necessarily concern that Luke Kuechly, at 26 years old, the former Defensive Player of the Year, is ready to hang it up. I know that he is very well studied on what's going on with concussions. And in this sport, of course, he wore an experimental device around his neck called a Q collar that's supposed to help prevent concussions. And so clearly he has taken heed to a lot of the advice that he's gotten from medical experts, and he's listened to them. We'll have to see. Time's going to tell on this one because, every fan, every observer, every resident of Charlotte, of course, where I live, is very concerned for the long-term health of Luke Kuechly.
Of course, the Panthers go to the Bears in their next game. Let's expand things out a little bit. This was a funny story. Commissioner Roger Goodell's wife, Jane, or should we call her by her Twitter alias, Jones Smith, I have to laugh, was defending her husband on Twitter. This is a la Kevin Durant. She was chirping at Pro Football Talk's Twitter feed, who were critical of Goodell. She apologized, but does it show that all this turmoil surrounding the players and the owners over the player protests is really getting to the commissioner?
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, he's been the punching bag for the league owners for a very long time. In part, that's why he gets paid the big bucks, right? He protects them from having to deal with all of this, everything else that's going on in the league. He's the guy who has to take the punches, and he gets paid a lot of money to do that. But now, he is the son of a senator, of course. And so when people start questioning your patriotism, when people start questioning your belief in the First Amendment, obviously we have a president who right now is very clearly dividing a lot of people, who's using divisive rhetoric. And so it's really kind of right now in this political world, what side are you on? And if Roger Goodell is trying to play it down the middle, he's going to be getting a lot of flack from a lot of people. And so I understand how it could seep into one's personal life. I can understand how one's wife would want to take up for her husband. Of course, when you get caught, it always looks really bad, right, Kevin Durant?
You referenced the battle between the president and the NFL, and Roger Goodell said he wasn't following what Trump said, and in fact, that they're going to meet with the players. What are you expecting from the upcoming talks between the NFL and the NFLPA?
Yeah, I'm expecting very little because in that memo that was sent around to 32 NFL teams that was later leaked to the press, the rhetoric in that letter seemed to indicate that they were only talking to one specific type of fan. And that would be the white NFL fan, the fan that believes that you should stand for the national anthem, the fan that doesn't see merit to what these players are protesting, which, of course, in the beginning, which has become bastardized, of course, with the help of Jerry Jones and some of the other owners, is the police brutality against black and brown people. That was originally the protest. We should never lose sight of that. So I'm pessimistic because of the wording of that letter, which seemed to echo what I think, if we're talking political landscape, what the media had said last year about the working class voter, which also seemed to leave out the black working class voter. And it seemed to lay the groundwork for a change that, hey guys, we don't want you standing, or we don't want you sitting or kneeling for the national anthem. What we're going to do is allow you, we're going to create a platform for you to do these other things, but please stand for the national anthem because that's kind of in our rule book and it would make our lives a lot easier. And so ultimately what the NFL cannot do in any kind of negotiation is cede power to the players. We see this during every CBA negotiation. I think we're going to see this next week, where if you give a little bit to the players, the owners will think that they will take a mile. And so I don't see them ceding very much to the players. I'm very pessimistic on that, one, because of that philosophy, but then also, of course, because of the wording and the rhetoric that was in that memo.
John, I imagine that maybe the NFLPA sees this more of a negotiation or as a negotiation than perhaps some of the players do, who are feeling a very visceral reaction to what Trump said and to what some of the owners have been saying. Do you think that the players, the majority of them, will just take marching orders off of whatever maybe agreements happen in this meeting next week? Or do you think we're still going to see pushback?
I think you're going to see pushback, but to a degree, right? I mean, these guys still need to be employed. The NFL is still the only show in town. You're very good at your job, but it's not like you can just pick up if you work at Apple and go to Microsoft, right? There is only one NFL. And so there's only so much that you can do. And I think that that's what fans, especially the fans who want to see some of their players take a knee or to sit or make a stand, ultimately, you could end up like Colin Kaepernick, who is a football martyr, who, in my opinion, and I've thought this for many months, despite how I want him to be in the NFL, will probably never get a job in the NFL again. And so I think a lot of people are saying, what if Dak and Zeke and Jason Witten kneeled for the national anthem? What's Jerry Jones going to do? Well, we're talking about, one, an impossible hypothetical with those three actually doing that. But then two, you're putting them in such an impossible situation, you, the fan, but then also, let's not forget who put them in an impossible situation from the beginning, and that would be the owner, Jerry Jones, because if they stand for the national anthem, then they're taking marching orders that Donald Trump won, and if they sit or kneel for the national anthem, then they will not be able to produce income for themselves and their families.
Yeah, it's an almost unimaginable situation for the players who do want to continue taking a knee. They have so few choices, it seems, right now, although we're going to stay tuned to see what happens at that meeting next week. Jonathan Jones from Charlotte. No, it was a late night for you last night with that game, so thank you for getting up early for us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Rob, another baseball season ends with heartbreak for the Washington Nationals. Game 5 of the NLDS, especially brutal considering they were at home. They had Max Scherzer on the mound in a relief appearance, and they had Bryce Harper at the plate for the final out. The Nats have yet to win a divisional series despite winning the NL East 4 of the last 6 years. Just add on top of that the fact that their pro football team hasn't been to a conference championship game since 1991. The Wizards haven't been to a conference final since 1979 when they weren't even the Wizards. And the Capitals haven't been to the conference final since 1998. Is D.C. the most frustrating sports town in America?
Well, when you put it that way.
What other ways are to put it?
The Nationals 0-4 in winner-take-all game. Dusty Baker 0 for his last 10 in the elimination situation. Not very good right there. But I was trying to come up with a counter, thinking about it before the show. And I spent a good portion of my life in the D.C. area. My one counter would be, I don't think they're as passionate about the other teams other than the football team, but the football team has been one of the most dysfunctional franchises in all of sports. In recent years, you could say New York, but New York has the Yankees historically, the Giants historically, the Knicks in the early 70s, and not since then. The Lakers, as of late, because no one cares about the L.A. There's a Freudian slip, right?
Yeah.
I'm calling L.A. the Lakers because that's the only thing they care about in L.A. They don't fill up the football stadiums, and the Lakers have been a mess, but we know the history there.
And the Kings have been good.
I think the answer has to be Washington, D.C.
It's hard to come up with another one. It really is. But I'll go with something that's near and dear to my heart, and obviously that is Buffalo, because we only have a couple teams that haven't been doing very well. I mean, you have to think about it. Cleveland got off the schneid. Chicago got off the schneid. D.C., though, it's not like, it's just total futility. They are making the playoffs. They're just falling short when they get there. And then in this heartbreaking kind of way, you're not going to put them up there with those long playoff droughts, obviously, because they keep getting to the postseason. But we need a new word for this. There's like a new term for what this kind of sports fan is. And I can't help, I feel like the only word is like constipated. And I feel so bad for them to say that. You're from that area, but it's just what it is.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and move on.
Okay.
Which World Series matchup, when you're looking at Yankees, Astros, and Cubs, Dodgers, the end result of those two series is the most mouth-watering to you? Okay,
so one of my favorite books, sports books, or just books in general, is Ladies and Gentlemen, The Bronx is Burning, which is such a fabulous book. It chronicles the Yankees 1977, and that was the year Reggie Jackson hit 3 home runs in Game 6, and he did it against the LA Dodgers. Then they went back and played the Dodgers again the next year. They played them again in 1981. I mean, I think a Yankees-Dodgers World Series would just be fantastic. I mean, not just because it's the two big markets in New York and L.A., but I would like a renewal of this rivalry. I think it would be a great spark.
A lot of baseball fans get mad at managers using a binder to make decisions like Joe Girardi and say, go with your gut. And my brain would initially say, you're right. You have history there. You have the two biggest markets. But my gut says Yankees and Cubs. Something about the Cubs trying to go back-to-back against the team in the Yankees, finally getting back to the World Series. They haven't been there since 2009, of course. There's just something about the particular matchup of those two teams, the history, the fan bases, the passion that I think makes for the best World Series matchup.
Yeah, I feel like the Cubs also, though, they got it last year, and it was so emotional. And maybe now after beating the Nationals and having all of this, I don't know, apparently Addison Reed said afterwards that he said he's never felt this electricity except for back when they won it. So maybe they're starting to feel that sort
except
of
for
mojo again.
a year ago.
Yeah, except for a year ago. But yeah, I mean, I could see that also. But I like the coast-to-coast rivalry. That's it for me.
There you go.
Ezekiel Elliott was suspended, then he was allowed to play. Now he is suspended again. The Dallas running back will not be allowed into the Cowboys facility until after the Thanksgiving game. To explain to us why the injunction has been lifted and Zeke's suspension is back, we welcome in our very own Michael McCann. So, Michael, out of a lot of back and forth now, why is Zeke now barred from the facility?
Sure, Maggie. So the main reason is that a federal appeals court found that Elliott pursued an appeal essentially of the arbitrator's ruling too early. Specifically, Harold Henderson was the presiding officer who would review Roger Goodell's suspension of Elliott. Well, Elliott went to court before Henderson had issued a ruling, and we noted it at the time that that was an unusual step because it suggested that Elliott was moving too fast, that he hadn't yet exhausted his internal remedies through the collective bargaining agreement. And on appeal, unfortunately for Elliott, the court said that's exactly the problem. So the victory that he had before is taken off the books. He can try to get another court hearing, but the odds are going to be stacked against him in all likelihood. So that's really the answer, is that his victory was vacated.
We mentioned the back and forth nature of this, Michael. Is this now the end of it? I get the read from what you just said it is.
Well, Robin, he could still, it really depends on what he wants to do, right? If he wants to play this out, he still has an opportunity to first go to New York. Now, so the litigation is now in New York because the NFL filed a lawsuit there. So he'd have to go to New York, convince a New York court to bring the case back to Texas, and then win again in Texas. And then hopefully on appeal, an appellate court rules in his favor. There's just a lot of steps there that at each level, the odds are not necessarily great for him. So, I mean, he can play it out, and maybe the union will want to play it out because it sees a path, at least a potential path of victory. But Elliott might also say, look, I've lost. I'll serve the suspension. Maybe he'll cut a deal with the NFL. Who knows where the suspension is reduced? I'm not sure. But going to court again requires quite a few steps.
Michael, you mentioned that Zeke Elliott was moving a little too fast as he was trying to get an appeal to play before the season started. I imagine that probably wasn't Elliott's own idea for a strategy. Who's to blame for that?
Well, the Players Association likely thought it wanted to get ahead of the NFL because it really goes back to the Tom Brady case. And I always try to bring things back to Deflategate. I realize that, but it's really true here because the NFL pulled a fast one, you could say, on Brady and the NFLPA back in the Deflategate case because they went to court first. They got a New York court where they had favorable jurisdiction. So here, the union said, let's go to Texas before the NFL goes to New York, because clearly that's where the NFL was going to go. So before a ruling by the hearing officer, they rushed to court in Texas, thinking that it would be okay, that they would get the right forum. The problem with that strategy is that it invited the criticism that they moved too fast because the presiding officer, Harold Henderson, hadn't yet issued a ruling. So, in hindsight, it looks like a bad move. At the time, it wasn't necessarily a bad gamble, but it's a gamble that failed.
Michael McCann's our legal expert. Michael, have a feeling we might be talking to you again soon about this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maggie.
The air surrounding his airness, turns out it's pretty smoky. Michael Jordan gave an interview to Cigar Aficionado magazine where he said he smokes 6 cigars a day. But that's not all. MJ also said a top-heavy NBA is bad for business. Here's his quote: "I think it's going to hurt the overall aspect of the league from a competitive standpoint. You're going to have 1 or 2 teams that are going to be great and another 28 teams that are going to be garbage, or they're going to have a tough time surviving in the business environment." Robin, 28 of the 30 teams in the league are garbage. That means his own team, the Charlotte Hornets, are trash, according to the greatest of all time. What's more shocking, that Jordan smokes 6 stogies a day, or that he called his own team trash?
You know what? Neither of these things shocks me, actually. I mean, I'm a little worried for his health to be smoking 6 cigars, and knowing Jordan, I don't think that number was picked arbitrarily.
Yeah.
But when you look at the league as a whole and him saying that, he's not too worried about the bottom line for his team, and he's trying to argue his case so his team can be better. What I have a problem with is saying, first of all, 28 teams are garbage. I mean, that would mean, are you just saying it's the Warriors and Cavs and the Rockets and the Thunder and the Spurs are garbage? But the other aspect of this, it's not about super teams. It's about the Warriors, a super team. Now, you can argue whether they've been bad or not because the NBA is in a good space right now. But the reason this is all happening is because of them, not a series or a sequence of super teams, and some of the other guys are coming together to try and combat them. And I heard Draymond Green say that the rest of the league is panicking because of us. Well, no duh. You won more games than any team in history and then signed Kevin Durant. So that's what's bothersome to me. You know, I love watching the Warriors play. I think they're probably the best team in league history. I mean, I'll remove it. They're the best team in league history, but that is where the real concern can pop up because they are an unfair composition of players, even if they were put together fairly.
Listen, I'm not trying to disparage some of the other teams that were playing against Jordan's Bulls back in the 90s, but wasn't it pretty much a given that they were going to go at least back to the finals every single year, and then they were favored every single year? So I'm kind of surprised that Jordan would say that this is bad for business, considering, I mean, he was good for business, his Bulls were good for business, and I understand, I guess, why maybe he thinks it's bad for Charlotte, but I'm just shocked that someone as competitive as Michael Jordan wouldn't say, no, we're not going to say it's bad for business. I'm actually going to go out and try to make the next incarnation of the Warriors. I mean, if he would just stop with these terrible draft picks, then maybe, let's be honest, I mean, then maybe they would actually have a better shot. And the East is going to be very down this year. I feel like if you're a Charlotte Hornets fan and you're not seeing your team as potentially one of the top 5, then you have some real soul searching to do.
It's a good point. It's odd how the people in positions of power seem to hate when the players have some power, and now Jordan, who was a player, is in a position of power, because just because it came together differently doesn't mean it was all that different when he was on the same team as Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and they were coached by Phil Jackson. So no surprise when they won. Maybe a surprise for some how well the Jacksonville Jaguars are playing. I asked their cornerback, A.J. Bouye, about that and other issues. Joined now by Jacksonville Jaguars cornerback A.J. Bouye. And the Jaguars, they've been brought up in some conversations as a surprise team this year. Are you surprised?
Definitely not. I've been practicing with these guys since offseason, OTAs and everything, so I knew what these guys were capable of, and I'm just glad that I was able to help be the addition to them along with Barry and Calais. But in camp, we was going hard. We seen the potential, and now it's just being consistent.
I guess asking you whether you're surprised if your team has performed well isn't exactly a hard-hitting question. Considering all the craziness that's gone on this NFL season, what has surprised you the most?
I'll probably just say the turnovers right now. We knew we wanted to get more. That was one thing that we emphasized, but we didn't know that was going to come at this rate, starting in Houston game. And we just kept it rolling each and every week. Tennessee was tough, but then just to finish the way we did in Pittsburgh Sunday, just with those turnovers, we saw what we could do as a defense.
How about Leonard Fournette? He's had a strong start to his rookie season, second in the league in rushing. How does he compare to other rookie running backs you've seen, or how about just running backs you've seen, period?
Oh, man, you see how fast he is, not only as physical. I think the play that he had this past Sunday, that just shows you the top-end speed he has. And not only that, he's a downhill back, but I believe he's good first down, second down, and third down. And, he can handle the carries. He's very durable, but he's been a key factor, us winning and everything.
Were there any times in practice, maybe before the season, where you tried to tackle him and it didn't go so well for you?
No, but we was talking as far as saying as if we was full pass, we going low. I said it once before, you got to make a business decision with him. You know, he's ready to come downhill. And just when you have an aggressive running back like that, looking to, put pain on players, it shows you the type of running back he is, how tough he is.
Deion Sanders gave you and Jalen Ramsey credit for your performance on Twitter Sunday. As a cornerback, what does it mean to be praised by Primetime?
It means a lot, looking up to him growing up. My dad was a Cowboys fan, so I seen him then, and then I'm from Atlanta, so I used to watch all his highlights when he was with the Falcons. But, me and Jalen couldn't do it without those guys on the front end, our safeties and our linebackers being in the position they are to help us make plays.
Do you remember Too Legit to Quit? Could you do that back in the was it Too Legit to Quit? Was that it?
Nah.
Well, speaking of quitting, Ben Roethlisberger, you guys made him question whether he has it anymore after the game this weekend. Was there any pride taken there from those comments from Roethlisberger?
I'm not going to say that. At the end of the day, he's a Hall of Famer, and I felt everybody was all fine with him a few weeks before he played against us. You see that he was out there doing what he needed. They were winning games. And, that's always been the common denominator lately. Everything is all good until they run into our defense. Now the excuses come out. And we take that very personal.
Well, Jay-Z said on Volume 2 it was all good just a week ago. Is that the mantra that the Jacksonville Jaguars defense has?
Yes, most definitely.
Now, last year you were on the Texans, an AFC South Division winning team, with, I don't think anyone would say stellar quarterback play. How similar is your situation in Jacksonville? How similar does that feel?
It's very tough right now just because we're missing a key part in Allen Robinson. But we feel that Blake has been doing a good job. He's been making the reads. There's some plays that's been left out there, but he's been doing a good job putting the offense in good positions, to get field goals or get points out or even get in the end zone. So we feel that he's been doing a good job, not only him, but the whole offense.
Is there anything in particular you've seen in Blake Bortles that shows you he could be the long-term answer at quarterback?
His decision-making, he started to make more plays with his legs, but you can tell he's competing. He's just out there having fun, trying to win, just like we all are. And I feel when the offense gets rolling, the defense gets rolling, we all play off each other and we hold each other accountable, week in, week out, every day, meetings, practice. So you're starting to see it show on the field.
Now, you're active with the American Cancer Society's Crucial Catch Initiative. What can you tell us about that program?
That was something that I wanted to get involved with, losing my mother at a young age and seeing what it did to my family and me not being as close with my sister. It was tough, and, I know there's a lot of families, kids who are going through it who probably have or family members who's having kids right now go through treatment. So I just want to do whatever I could to just help bring awareness to it and raise money to help those families.
A.J. Bouye, Jacksonville Jaguars cornerback. Unlike Ben Roethlisberger, I don't feel like I'm finished after facing you. Thanks for the time, man.
Oh, thank you, guys.
So, Robin, do you like beer?
Actually, I do.
Do you like sports?
Well, obviously.
Well, then check this out. Sports Illustrated has partnered with Samuel Adams to send 2 lucky fans to the 2017 Sports Person of the Year Gala. All they have to do is hold a stein of beer for longer than anyone else in America.
At Sam Adams, we take training seriously. Because there could be only one Sam Adams Oktoberfest Stein hoisting champion.
Male and female winners will each receive a trip for 2 to SI's marquee December soiree, where they'll rub elbows and tired arms with fellow athletes. Robin, the U.S. national record is currently 19 minutes, 15 seconds. Do you think you have a shot?
Well, let me give it a shot. How much time we got left in the show?
As much as you need.
Let's go. All right. Man, this is like something Thor would drink out of.
Yeah.
And it's not even the actual stein.
How does that feel?
There's not actually beer in here, and no way I'm getting to 19 minutes.
Keep holding. Check out SamuelAdams.com/Stein hoisting for details on the competition.
Can I switch hands?
And to find an event near you. Keep holding.
It burns.
Robin, go. It's time for SI Now's Weekend Drive presented by Toyota. Let's go places. First, we head to Los Angeles for Game 1 of the NLCS, a rematch from last season between the Dodgers and the reigning champion Chicago Cubs. This year, the Dodgers have home field advantage after racking up a league-leading 57 wins at home. Here's Cubs manager Joe Maddon with his scouting report of the Dodgers.
They have a specific plan regarding how they like to pitch. They got Mr. Kershaw, obviously, and they got Darvish, et cetera. So listen, we just went through Strasburg and Scherzer. I mean, that's no day at the beach either. When you get to this time of the year, you really have to be prepared to beat good pitching.
This is a different Dodger team than last year. Now the Cubs will have to game plan for Yu Darvish and red-hot rookie Cody Bellinger. Next, we head to the Texas State Fair in Dallas for college football and the Red River rivalry between Oklahoma and Texas. Both schools have first-year coaches leading their teams into this game. Longhorns coach Tom Herman knows how important a win and a 3-0 record in the Big 12 would be for his team.
It's a big game because it's it's a team that's 2-0 in conference play and a team that's 1-1 in conference play. And as I said earlier today, they don't give you any extra points in the Big 12 standings for beating Oklahoma.
Oklahoma needs to move past their stunning loss to Iowa State, and it starts with their defense, which has given up almost 1,000 yards in their past 2 games. Lastly, we head to Kansas City to see the undefeated Chiefs take on the Steelers. Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger is coming off a 5-interception debacle against the Jaguars and is aware of how challenging it will be to face an undefeated team on their home turf.
Obviously, we're going into an awesome environment this weekend with the last undefeated team, a football team that's playing really well right now that leads the AFC. So what an awesome challenge for us.
The Steelers don't look like the cohesive unit they were a year ago. However, they did beat the Chiefs twice last season, including a narrow win at Arrowhead in the playoffs. And that's what's in store.